Everybody. Let me turn that mic up. Hey, Tommy. How is everything looking, feeling, sounding? Can you guys hear the backing track okay? I figured out a way to make everything go through the software. I'm really working my ass off on getting this all right. Hi, Abba. Hi, Naveed. Let's see. Bounce. Hear that drum beat okay? Is everything coming through all right? Yeah, I don't really use chorus. I don't like it very much. What do you guys think about the drum beats? Pretty sweet sounding stuff, right? I'm digging it. Drums are cool, tapping away. Good. Hey, Kim. Hey, Danny, I just picked up a guitar and I've been getting a feel for some chords that friends showed me. D7, D9. Could you show me a chord that, yeah. All right, Kyle. So when you're going for a D type of like bluesy kind of sound, funky sound, you see this. I have a fretboard camera right here. I know it's a little bit blinding, but you see that D9 you're used to. What you want to do is find that D note on the E string up here, and then play this kind of voicing. You see that? So the notes, again, it's all about, when you're finding chords, it's about like orienting yourself correctly, right? So here's that, you know, with a D like this, you find the D on the bottom, but here you find the D on top, right? So D is in the soprano, it's the melody note. And you arrange the notes flat, 7, 9, 3, and root. So tabbed out would be like 10th fret, 9th fret, 7th fret, 10th fret on top. And a nice thing to do is be able to travel to that voicing from this kind of like bar chord D7. So, or even better, like a 9 chord. So if you just know 4-string voicings, this is kind of a D9 sound. So 10th fret, 9th fret, 10th fret, 9th fret. And then when you move to a block chord on the next 4 strings, you get this F sharp half diminished voicing, but it's the same sound. And then you get to that one. And there's barely any motion between them. Two fingers are always kind of anchoring. So instead of just going, or if it's like a funky thing. So you have 3 chords that are all basically related, but they're really easy to get from one to the other. So for instance, let's say I'm playing a blues in A. 4 chord is that. Back to the 1 chord. Here's the 5 chord, E. 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord. Easy trick, or easy enough once you get it together, but it gives you a nice thing to bounce off of. Cool. I'm gonna play more with my superior drummer. Here's relaxed 16ths. that gives me ideas to play with. Cool. That's all you could, all one could ask for. By the way, if you guys are watching us on any platform but YouTube right now, please go to youtube.com/MarbinMusic and hit that subscribe button. That would be cool. Enjoyed your singles off of Bandcamp Friday. Oh, thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Jared. God bless you too. Dawn, you're like one of 5 people in the world who's heard those.
There's a terrible...
Hey, Tracy, how you doing? so much, LD Mixer. I appreciate it. I'm glad you learned some stuff. Yeah, if you guys have any questions about anything I do, please let me know. Let's talk about it. Where are you stuck? Let me know. Do you listen to Jonathan Kreisberg? Well, I will tell you that I listened to his solo album, and it inspired me, because after I heard it for the first time, I was like, I can do better. And then I made a solo album called 10 Years in the Sun, and I think it is better. Hey, Anita. Funky. Regards from Italy. What's up, Alessandro? Do you take song requests? Just a pupper. Thanks, Samucha. Do you take song requests? If I know them, I take them. Play with my Matheny sound. Let's see. 3/14 is a cool time signature. There's no such thing as 14ths, unfortunately. That's not a time signature that exists. The number on the bottom needs to be divisible by 2, by 4, I mean. So, or you can have 1, 2, 4, Like it needs to be a subdivision. No such thing as 14th. Really. Let's see. How about like watermelon then? Backing track. We'll shred some. Watermelon man. Can you give us tips for whole half diminished over, or half whole diminished over dominance? Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, let's talk about it right now. So first of all, it's understanding what kind of, like where you'd use it in harmony. Have you heard about Coltrane Patterns? Of course. So the way to think about Coltrane Patterns is not, I mean, you can mechanically learn how to move like, you know, right? But if you think about what that whole thing means, like the first 3 bars of giant steps, it's a substitution for a 2-5-1 going to where it's going, right? So that whole thing, forget about where measure 1 and 2, it ends in E flat, right? It's a B major 7 to a D7 to a G major 7 to a B flat 7, and then it's going to E flat. So it's a cadence, right? And it's a very straightforward cadence in a way. It's a substitution for something else that's also a cadence. So if you take a look at, let's say, a D minor 7, clean, D minor 7, G7, C. So instead of the D minor 7, I can play the first basically set of 2 chords of a Coltrane substitution. Instead of the G7, I'm playing the second 2 chords, right? So it's about understanding really the relationship of the chord you're playing that substitution instead of, right? So and that way you can apply it to other standards you're playing. Let's say I'm playing All of Me, and the last bit goes like, why not take all of me? Why not take all of me? So instead it's like, why not take all of me? Not that that really fits with the melody, but the way you would do it would be an A flat major 7 in that key, going to a B dominant, going to an E major 7, to a G7, and ending up on C. So it's substituting that motion in harmony. And if you can play through that harmony, then you know how to really use Coltrane substitutions, right? So it wouldn't work if you're comping for the melody, because it would clash with the melody, but let's say you're trying to throw it into a solo, right? Just playing really inside All of Me. And then here. So see how I threw it instead of I went. So a lot of people know how to maybe play through giant steps, but don't necessarily know how to throw that into songs. The tricky part about it, you can't throw it in under the melody because it doesn't necessarily fit under the melody. Okay. Can you give, so same context, let's say, do you agree with Barry Harris that there is no need to learn modes if you want to play jazz? I do not agree at all. And if you actually go on Spotify and listen to Barry Harris, he's a really below average piano player. Like, he's certainly no Oscar Peterson, so I would take everything coming out of that dude's mouth with a grain of salt. I mean, he's all right, but I don't know. Well, I don't just because he became a famous teacher, there's no reason to follow this dude like he's like he has the gospel. No, I don't agree with that at all. I think you need to learn modes, and I think that his system, you know, he has, at least in my estimation, and you could say that, you know, who the fuck am I? But I feel like I play fusion better than that guy plays jazz. But in any case, it's not about that. I'm saying that at music, right, he can play, and they see a lot of interconnections, but it has very little to do with how they got to be able to play the way they play. I mean, I'm sure Barry Harris has kind of been playing the same sort of level since the 50s, or the 40s even. And a lot of times you see that a lot with philosophers, with like Hume or Kant or people like that. They try to redefine all of language to basically, to take you along to the deeper points that they're making. But it's a problematic thing to do. And it seems I feel like he feels like that's the way he's thinking, but I think it's the way he's thinking now after he already taught himself how to think, how to do things intuitively. So I would take explanations. It's almost like you need simple systems to play well, at least initially, not systems that imitate the complexity of playing. I feel like what he's trying to do is present a system that is as complicated as playing itself. I mean, I understand it's really just 4 scales with all those diminished chords, but I don't know. It hasn't been my experience that that's how it looks like when you're hovering above the instrument and really looking at it. I mean, I understand all these diminished chords are options and they lead to all these inversions, but never my cup of tea. So, long answer for no. Anyways, so Tommy, with the diminished stuff, it's just something you play on 5 chords that lead to major sounds. So the trick is to learn what each note in the mode sounds like over that diminished chord and where it could resolve. So if I have a 2-5-1 in C, right, D minor, Dorian, and then on the G, I'm playing G half whole diminished. The problem is, and what you really want to do is not just see that like the mechanical thing, this little symmetric dance, and we have like a 2-string pattern that's repetitive, as you move it basically in thirds, right, or in major 6s, right? That's a major pattern of 6 notes, major 6 away. So you don't want to get addicted to the symmetry, of the fretboard. That's it's a good way to get your fingers around the instrument, but it's not a good way to understand how these sounds relate to the root. So in the case of the dominant chord, what you really want to see is the arpeggio of the full dominant chord and the 4 tensions within it. So here's a G7 arpeggio. And as I see it like that, I want to be able to fill in the blanks between every 2 sets of chord tones. So between the root and the third, I have a flat 2 and a sharp 2. But since it's moving harmony, I need to know how to resolve each one of them to a C Ionian sound. So this is a common tone with C, the G, so I don't have to do much about that, right? If it's a flat 2, it can go either to the 6 of C, meaning the A. So if I have a phrase that's a diminished kind of phrase, right? Maybe higher up would be easier to understand. So here's a G7, here's the flat 9 and sharp 9. Between the root and the flat 7 of the G, there's nothing. Between the flat 7 and the 5th of the G, you have a 13. So that's kind of like Mixolydian. But here between the 5th and 3rd, you have a sharp 4. And that's where all the cool voicings for this. So 2-5-1 could be like. The iconic sounds from this scale really are those. And obviously everything you play here could be moved this way, but that's exactly what you want to get away from, because you want to control putting the tensions on kind of one by one, to hand cherry pick them. So the idea is, as you move up the neck, let's say you're seeing G7 instead of here, find your next, however you see G7, maybe this first inversion G7 would be like there, and understand, okay, so if this is the root, here's my flat 2, sharp 2. Right. Here's my sharp 11. Can you share some tips for practicing melodic minor? You can't practice all of something like a scale, really. I mean, you can. Thanks, Dom. Or Don, sorry. You have Don and Dom in your name. Don Demisi. Okay. So there's the initial kind of practicing that everybody needs to do, and you can't skip it, which is the textbook kind of thing. You know, it's so funny because it seems to me like that Berkeley kind of approach of learning like the across fingerings for melodic minor. People treat that like that's the end-all be-all, but that's just the first thing you need to do, and you need to do it well. And then after that, you need to learn how to play up and down each string. The scale without really dealing with modes. Modes are a more sophisticated version of looking at scales because you are not only trying to locate the mechanical position of the notes on a fretboard, you're also trying to teach yourself what things sound like with one of the notes inside the scale as a tonal center, as a tonal point of reference. So let's say I'm learning F melodic minor. Step 1 would be to just map out the notes on the fretboard. And there are 4 ways to travel a neck. If you just think about it like a piece of wood with pieces of metal running across it, right? So way number 1 would be really the most intuitive one, up and down every string. So F melodic minor. And at this point, I'm not even calling this 1, 2, flat, 3, 4, because it's all the modes together. I'm just practicing the shape on every string. It doesn't matter what I call it, right? And I don't need to remember note names or anything like that, right? Et cetera, on every string up and down. Then there are the 7 across positions. So this could be, and there's 2 options with the cross positions. You can play 2 notes on the G string and 3 notes on the B string, or 3 notes on the G string, 2 on the B string. So here's option 1 for this, 2 on the G string. And I care, what makes positions is that you use your index finger to get 2 octaves exactly. So the symmetry happens kind of here. And really, position playing comes from understanding how to lay out the scale on one string, because all you're really doing is finding all the notes of the 2 octaves between. You see, that's the logic. That's F melodic minor, and then you find little F melodic minors on the way, right? So you map out those, and they're inside each one. There's only 2 possible finger patterns. 1, 2 notes here, 3 here, or 3 on the G, 2 on the B. And then you do the same on the next string, right? Etc. etc. So let's say you do that. Now, mixing them, or so we said that's 2 out of the 4 ways to travel a fretboard. Then you have diagonals, right? So we said up and down every string, across in every position, and now you have this diagonal and that diagonal. So once you know a pattern, right? Let's say I know this 3 note, 3 note, 3 note, 2 note, 3 note, whatever, 1 or 3 notes here. If you add a note to it, you jump up a position to any string. So if I add a note to the first position, all of a sudden you see my index finger is now in the next position. If I add a note to the next string, I jump another position. So this diagonal has to do with adding notes to the pattern. If I play this pattern an octave up and I subtract notes from it, let's say I play 2 notes per string instead of 3 on the beginning, instead of this, I locate that A flat here. All of a sudden, my index finger is in this position. So any note I subtract from this pattern gets me 1 position further in this diagonal. Those are the ways you can learn a fretboard. Up and down one string, across in positions, this diagonal, that diagonal. So, but that's just mapping out notes. You still haven't learned anything about modes. Learning about modes has to do with learning to hear all these locations that you've just uncovered on the fretboard as sound relationships, meaning all that against an F root. Is what we call melodic minor, the first mode of melodic minor. But if I do exactly the same thing over a C root, then I get a sound called Mixolydian flat 6, right? Or Mixolydian natural 9 flat 6, or flat 13, and which is the same exact notes, just relating. Dorian flat 2 is all those notes against the G root, right? So the work has to do with, first of all, understanding where all the things are, and then doing the, I don't want to say it's ear training because you're not going to be tested on it. You know what I mean? It's not like somebody's, you got to be like, oh, that's whatever. That's Dorian flat 2, A. You know, it's about learning how to use it in the songs you actually play and how to apply it. So once you understand the sound to that resolution and to that level, then you can shoot it out ideally when the time comes, let's say in a blues, right? You want to play a certain mode of that F melodic minor. You need to recognize when the opportunity comes. So let's say I'm playing an A shuffle, like Stevie Ray Vaughan shuffle, right? And then I get to that, here's the 4 chord, and here's the 5 chord. On that E7, if I play that F melodic minor, it gives me a mode called altered. So all that across stuff you worked out are little houses where the whatever phrase in altered lives, and you just need to find it, right? So first of all, you find a melody that works, right? Whatever. Then you can just locate it in each one of these positions, right? So that started D, C, right? So let's say I'm in my first box, right? D, C. I have to play it an octave down because the note's pretty high. So I never play it that way, but so now I have that vocabulary there. And I can locate it maybe here after. So these areas could be just basically these little compartments of the neck that give you the possibility. Now, certain things are going to work with your picking, with your left hand technique better than others. So creating great flow is not necessarily about learning how to play every phrase in every location. That's just how an OCD person approaches perfection, you know. That's not, that actually doesn't hold true in the real world, because what ends up happening is that you end up spreading yourself too thin and you don't actually use, you're working a lot of times against the grain of your technique. Your technique, by nature, the way you hold the pick, the way the way you set up your tone, whether it's gainy or super clean or whatever, is good for some things and bad for other things. So you always want to work on things in a way that if you find a motion that allows you to play a certain kind of phrase, like 16, really tight, you won't find that anywhere, or everywhere. You'll find it in some places, and you got to understand what's the physicality of the move that makes it so fluid for you, and then how you can find phrases that really, have that motion to them rather than the notes. That was a long explanation and I don't even remember the question anymore. So that's how I know I explained it well. You're welcome, LD Mixer. you doing, man? Beep boo 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 beep boo do 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 do. Watermelon man. All right. Any more practice questions? Or are you guys all good? Yeah. I'm happy to see you too. Hope to come to Florida soon. Hang out. All right. Let's see. Gotta know Locrian. You gotta know Locrian really well to play jazz. But Locrian is not a big deal. It's just because most of you know. Let's say you know this. At a minimum, you know how to play like the fingerings for a major scale. So it's just about training your ears to understand those notes in relation to, that was a C major, to a B. So let's see. What's cool? He's outside now. A backing track we wouldn't choose. So I'm working on some things to see if I can get you guys broke down. Oh, that'll be awesome, Mark. So yeah, Locrian. So the trick really is to first of all play over the chord itself before anything. Just learning how to adapt this information of just a C major scale to a simple B half diminished or just a B root. So let's say you know C major here. I'm starting on a G, right? Doesn't have to start on G, anything. Just these notes. Now, hearing them on that B. Now, the real thing about Locrian is that it has only one avoid note inside the mode. If you don't know what avoid notes are tensions that are located a half step above chord tones. So only the flat 2 is an avoid note because it's exactly a half step above the root. Now, think about what's in the mode. Root, flat 2, flat 3, natural 4, whole step above the flat 3, flat 5, chord tone, flat 6 is a whole step above the flat 5, and then a flat 7. So just a flat 2 is one you want to... Now, avoid note is a tricky thing. You don't want to avoid it. You just don't want to resolve to it. It's kind of like when you hear a sus chord, when the 4 goes to the 3. It creates tension that's so intense that it makes the resolution obvious. And when it's obvious, it needs to happen, right? It's like you just want to hear it do that. So if I play a C inside that... You just want to hear that C go to B. Melodically, it's the same thing. That's how you would ride a mountain. It wouldn't make sense to just... So learning a mode is really about learning how to... what effect each one of the notes has on the root. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the important thing you need to know about jazz. You can start phrases on any note in or out of the mode as long as you're aware of the sound of the mode. I'll give you an example. Right, here's a B diminished. B half diminished, I mean, the chord we're talking about, right? That's a better question rather than how to use Locrian. And this is something, by the way, that I see with students all the time. They're like, Locrian's a perfect, how do I use Locrian? It's like, don't worry about Locrian. Like, how do you play over half diminished chords? That's the question, right? So if you're obsessed about the tools, it's like, how do I use the hammer? Well, what do you need to do? You know what I mean? Like, it's more like, how do I fix my sink? It should be the question. So if you focus about the harmonic material you're attempting to play over, most of you guys are not attempting to play over these songs, so you never even get there from the right angle. The right angle is to, make yourself play some standards, and then you run into these Locrian sounds, and they're like, oh, how do I... And then you have, a context. And that's the optimal way to address this whole thing. But anyways, here's Locrian, right? I'm going to play a phrase that starts from the root. I'm going to play a phrase that starts from the flat 2. From the natural 2. From the flat 3. From the natural 3. From the 4. From the flat 5. From the natural 5. Right? So I can really play from every single chord tone. It doesn't matter as long as I'm aware of what I'm doing. So that's kind of the deeper level of melodic freedom and how you should approach modes. You need to just be very aware of, and that's just, you know, there's only 7 sounds in a mode. You can check them out in 1 minute, right? Here's a root on a root. Here's the flat 2. It's always going to sound like that. Flat 3. The 4. The flat 5. The flat 6. Flat 7. Right? And then the notes that are outside of the tonality, the natural tune. The natural 7th. The natural 6th. So that's the idea. I do phrase lyric mixes a lot. Way I remember modes is Locrian is the 7th, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. That's the right order of how they come out of the major scale. But the problem is that, you know, in music they just manifest not randomly, but based on whatever the harmonic progression is. So you need to have a very good way of drawing them out of your mind quickly, you know. So that could be the tricky part. Man, I can just mute the YouTube clips now. This is wonderful. How do you practice arpeggios, mixing, and chromatic scales? I never think about chromatic scales. I think about chromatic approach notes, if anything. And I don't really practice too much of that, but I certainly have. So it's about, well, okay, so when you're practicing arpeggios, there's 2 levels to practicing arpeggios. There is playing the arpeggio of the chord that you're playing on, meaning right now it was the chicken. The first chord in the chicken is a B flat 7. If I am playing a B flat 7 over a B flat 7, that's an arpeggio. If I'm playing any other arpeggio over the B flat 7, that's a substitution. That's what substitutions are. So even if they're very related, like D half diminished could be thought of as a B flat 9, to me, that's a substitution. I need to memorize the relationship somehow. Could be in a lot of ways. Could be totally physical. Could be saying to myself, to get like some sort of Mixolydian sound, I go a third away from the root and play a half diminished arpeggio. Maybe initially that's how you want to do it. So there's just applying chords to chords. That's what substitutions are. And then inside that, how you maneuver around could be how you get from chord tone to chord tone. could have melodic tools that are chromatic, right? So the melodic tools could be approach notes, neighbor tones, passing tones, or chromatic enclosures. That's really what we're dealing with. There's not really much else. So playing an arpeggio of the chord, like if you, let's say I'm just playing over a B flat 7. So I map out a B flat 7. And now I use approach notes, just half steps under. Right, that gives you that sound, but it's pretty circusy. It's kind of like very Pink Panther to use these kind of articulations. So the way you get around it truly is you don't play all of them all the time. You want to practice it with an approach note, but not all approach notes. So approach note to the root is something you hear a lot in gypsy jazz, like a you know. Approach notes sound better descending because the approach note itself is always ascending, so it messes with the contour. If you go up with the arpeggio, then everything's going up. Right? But if you go down, every approach note creates a zigzag in the contour. B, B, ooh. So that's just adding it to the root. Add it to the third is really what most people do. That sounds really bluesy, right? Especially descending, very George Benson-y. Fifth. Right? But that's just to the arpeggio. Now, if you find a substitution you like D half diminished on that B flat, that has no B flat, and then you do the same thing. Right, that's very Charlie Parker. Right, that was just approach notes. Now you get into, in gypsy jazz, we use a lot of enclosures, which are approach notes and neighbor tones. Approach notes are always chromatic. Neighbor tones are diatonic to whatever tonality the chord comes from. So that's where you need to know modes. And if you're basically a Barry Harris type guy, you're guessing, you know. But that's one thing. And then chromatic approach notes, chromatic enclosures, like in bebop, could be super cool to do. Like there's famous ones like that have 5 notes in them. Like if I'm playing over the B flat, I use 2 from below, 2 from below, 2 from above, and then 1 from below. So this all is just going to the root. That's and the shape of that, like the contour of that whole ornament never changes, but what changes could be like the rest of the arpeggio. So you could play a B flat major arpeggio with that shape inside it. Right? And now the rest of the notes are just a B flat arpeggio. B flat. Right? So that gives you some tools. Now, do I practice this stuff to a level where I could just shoot it out and tell myself, you know, I'm going to play that specific, you know, chromatic thing with that arpeggio? I don't do that really, but you know, I have, so some of it made it to my playing, but a lot of times, especially these days, I'm like not excited about the notion of artificially inserting arbitrary vocabulary into my playing. You know, it's because I know if I practice that a lot, I'll start playing it, but then what would happen? I don't know. It's like, you know, would it be better? So it depends what you want to happen to your playing, but if you have zero jazz contours, jazz rhythms, and things like that in your playing, then that's a great thing to do. I mean, I've done it a lot at some point. A lot of people still ask me, like, how did you practice? What did you practice? What system did you use? I checked out everything, really. Like, I checked out Barry Harris deeply, like not as deeply as some of the nerds that like are, making 80 episodes of videos trying to explain to themselves and to other people what he's doing, but deeply enough to get what it's about and understand that, I with Marbin I played thousands of shows, and I am a bonehead. I'm not as smart as I'm not as intellectually savvy as some players, I'm sure, but when I just ask myself honestly if that type of thinking and that type of tools would would be something that I could just whoop out at any point, the answer is no. It's too much. You need simple systems. You need simple, clean-cut ways, elegant ways about thinking about the material, because everything's happening very quickly in the music, so you need to have simple tools that you could just rely on, like modes, like arpeggios, like approach notes, like things like that. And yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
Is it possible to make an income?
I don't practice triad pairs, no. But triad pairs are just a way of isolating colors from a mode, right? So if you're bored of, like, let's say you asked about the melodic minor. So let's say you have F melodic minor, and then you're just sick of going through the F melodic minor thing. So you take out two triads that live inside F melodic minor. Let's say F minor and maybe something that's not super related to, like F minor and G minor, the 1 and 2 chord. Or usually people do the 4 and 5, so it could be, C major and B flat. And then you apply it to a root, like Barry Harris is Barry Harris, unlike Rick Beato, Barry Harris actually made music in his life. He played on the outtakes of Giant Steps, and he did play on a lot of famous records, but to lay out the correct method of thinking about jazz, again, if Oscar Peterson was the one that said, I probably would be more keen on be like, whatever you say, Oscar, you're amazing, you're the shit, you shred, I love you. But he's just kind of an okay pianist. I don't know, you listen to his record, think like, again, he's good. He plays jazz. I like jazz. I like people who play solo piano. But I heard some albums, and it was just like, I don't know. Like, it would be like if you went to see LeBron James, playing, just flying over people and dunking, and then a guy, that's on the bench for the whole season, wrote a book about how to dunk. Be like, I mean, I guess you're good. You're in the NBA. Better than me at basketball, maybe. I don't know. But, just shut the fuck up. Anyway, triad pairs. So let's say I have an F minor and a G minor, and now I'm applying it to an E root, right? So I mess around with, I isolate colors that exist in the E altered, right? Sounds like you're playing two triads, which is great if that's the sound you want. But if you want more of a scalar sound, which is people's problem isn't that they play, it's so funny to me because so many people are like, I don't like to practice modes because it sounds like I'm playing scales. It's like, play scales. It's better than the half dim-witted blues shit that most people play over this shit. I would rather hear somebody play over an E7 than when they're trying to play blues over Stella. It's like, that's the worst. Like, just play scales if you're going to play anything. So I'm saying the problem with triad pairs is that it makes you play these big intervals because you're just seeing these triads, right? Or in people's licks would it tend to be. And that's how a lot of people play now, like Kurt Rosenwinkel and all these kind of dudes. And I don't like it, because it just doesn't sound like lines. Modes have the potential of you to make lines with them if you get past the point of playing them just up and down. So I would say that vision is good because it lets you isolate color from a mode, and it's bad because it encourages you, if you don't practice it thoroughly enough, to just play stupid contours. 3 notes up, 3 notes up, 4 notes down, 4 notes down. Which is, again, it's sometimes it's nice, like for diminished sound, something playing 2 major triads, tritone apart, like that's a nice sound, that's in every either altered or Lydian dominant thing, or whole half whole diminished. But yeah. Tyler, marbinmusic.bandcamp.com. Jeremias. Jeremias? How do you say that? Man. Can you guys tell people about this YouTube channel? We started so late in the game. It's so sad. Send people some invites. Subscribe. Hit that bell button. I knew something was off. Alright, playing more drum grooves. Thrash. Yeah. Very cool, guys. Well, I'm going to sign off for a little bit, and I might do another